or at least the discussion of that has changed, which we will be talking because the idea of changing voter participation or changing term limits is a voter rights and a civil rights question in and of itself that we will talk about. But we invited three of the leading names that were to seek the mayoralty next year to address us. And the first has arrived. All three were here last night at my birthday, but I wanted them to face this group of National Action Network leaders to address the issue of how they see things in the city. And I'm going to also ask them to address the term limit question from their perspective. And the first is a gentleman I've known for many years. For the purposes of full disclosure, his father, Judge William C. Thompson Sr., was the attorney for the church. I grew up in Brooklyn, and I got to know him many years ago. We both coming out of Brooklyn. I got to know him well when he was a congressional assistant and deputy borough president of Brooklyn, then the president of Board of Education, and then New York City Controller. And he's no stranger to National Action Network. I cannot think of anything that the New York branch has done that he has not been involved and accessible and available to. And he is the sitting city controller, and he is widely assumed to be a candidate for mayor next year. And he controls multi-billion-dollar budget, municipal budget, which is different, that he does not control multiple billions personal budget. So that's a distinguishing fact in New York City politics for you that are out of town. The Honorable William C. Thompson.
Thank you, Reverend Sharpton. Let's see. Yeah, definitely. Good afternoon, everybody. Let me start out by saying what a pleasure it is to be back again with friends from the National Action Network. We have stood together on a number of occasions, whether it is issues involving police misconduct, whether it is issues of economic justice, you name the issue. It has been a pleasure to stand with so many of you over the years. And I know that there are people here from New York City as well as around the country. So it is definitely good to see so many from in New York, but around the country. I would have come prepared earlier when the first invitation came in to talk more about a future vision of New York City, because I would have been here to talk just as a mayoral candidate. It appears as if situations change, and the one thing I have to admit, in New York City, things change quickly, okay? If you blink, you will miss. The world will change in a matter of a blink of an eye in New York City. What I am going to talk about briefly is kind of, and I know originally the discussion we were supposed to be part of it. Let me thank Reverend Sharpton, and by the way, in introduction last night, just so you get an idea of how long we've known each other, an introduction last night, and he stole my line. I'm going to say that. The line that I've been able to use and talk about is, we knew each other when we both had big afros. And that is how long, and unfortunately for me, at a time when I had a lot more hair than I do today, he has done well with hair. It is depressing, okay? It has definitely been depressing over the years. Yeah, he's doing a lot better than I am. But let me first talk about kind of where New York City is right now. And before we talk about term limits, I am going to talk about that too. But to give you an idea of exactly where this city stands, and no, we are going through difficult times in New York. Now, we have heard so much about what is happening on Wall Street, and Wall Street is a big part of New York City. We are dependent on Wall Street. One out of only, let's see, probably 5% of the jobs are on Wall Street, but 20% of our revenue comes from Wall Street. So we are very dependent. Let us make no mistake about that. But everyone assumes that the problems on Wall Street and the problems in our neighborhoods began a few weeks ago. That's when people started to focus. That's not true. We have been struggling in New York City for at least a couple of years. And as we look and, go back to look at the subprime crisis, go back to look at so many of our friends and neighbors who have lost their homes in New York City. We have lost, and as a matter of fact, if you stood there a year ago and put it on a map, plotted it on the map, and took a look at where those communities were, Central Brooklyn, Southeast Queens, parts of the Bronx, started to spread into Staten Island. But primarily, the mortgage crisis, the crisis of foreclosure in the city of New York was in African American and Latino communities in New York City. It is spreading, it is hitting every neighborhood, but the crisis initially, as we saw last year, 15,000 foreclosures in the city of New York. 15,000, primarily in communities of color. That's where the crisis has been. That's where you saw the first impact, the first manifestation of bad behavior on Wall Street. As people and across the board, whether it's just in those who helped to package the subprime loans, those who talked people into subprime loans when they should not have been there, or as we just looked at people who sold homes to individuals who they knew couldn't afford those homes. They knew they couldn't afford it. Everybody made money and got out as quick as they could. And too many people were left holding the bag. And that's the situation we are still in today. That we are still looking at a rise of foreclosures. The state has tried to take action. My office has tried to do work. We've helped to save individuals. But for every person we see, there are at least another 10 or 20 who are out there who are suffering. So New York City has been, we have seen problems in New York for a couple of years now. We have looked at, we were all in the last year, as I said, everybody acts as if the financial crisis just started 3 weeks ago on a Monday morning when Lehman Brothers closed and when AIG almost went down the tubes. That's not when the financial crisis started. It has started in our neighborhoods and it has been out there for the last couple of years. And what we have seen are people who have been laid off from jobs. We've seen problems with mortgages, water rates that continue to go up, our fuel, our rents, and what we have witnessed over the last few years, particularly as we looked at the good times for a lot of people. Not everybody, but the good times for a number of people. A lot of our neighbors also who had been there for years during the tough times when neighborhoods weren't quite as stable. Neighborhoods like Bedford-Stuyvesant and Harlem and others, all of a sudden, a lot of our neighbors have been pushed out also and displaced from the neighborhoods that they helped to stabilize during the tough times. So everybody who acts as if our problem just began, we've been having problems for a while. It just didn't happen 3 weeks ago. No, I'm going to touch on a couple of quick topics, and I would have, as if we would have been doing a mayoral forum, that I would have touched on. But education, and I know that Reverend Sharpton has done a lot in that area. He's created a major focus, and so have many in this room. And has there been movement? I think there's been change. I'm not sure that there's been full movement. We have seen things change. We've seen an education system that has been, that we've seen a lot of reorganization. And no, we have seen scores move up. I'm not sure, though, that the movement in scores just isn't teaching to the test. And the thing that we do need, we need in lower class size, in earlier grades, and focus on literacy, and so many other things that go along. We know who's having problems. Our students.
Oh, nice out.
They'll do anything.
They'll do anything. I know. Norman, could you go to court and get the lights back on? An injunction to prevent the lights from being turned on. Tell you what, I will continue to talk as we go on, because I also know we have cut into the panel. Let me thank the members of the panel for allowing me to make a few comments. And one of the things, and just to touch on, as the discussion about criminal justice continues, I know that, and one of the things that we've continued to hear time and time again is a need for additional training in different areas, a need for more, and go back to the old phrase, community policing. But the one thing that we constantly heard and continually heard in hearings